on this edition of the Self-Publishing Show.
We all know the best advice that you don't want to switch to narrators midway through a series because readers will just freak out about that. And so for some of them, they just given up on having audio available because they couldn't find a narrator that would work under that circumstance. And now they have some options.
Yeah, because the robot never goes on holiday.
No, until it declares war on us.
Publishing is changing. No more gatekeepers. No more barriers. No one standing between you and your readers. Do you want to make a living from your writing? Join indie bestseller Mark Dawson and first-time author James Blatch as they shine a light on the secrets of self-publishing success. This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Hello, yes, welcome to the Self-Publishing Show. I'm James Blatch.
And I'm Mark Dawson.
Now, if you're watching on YouTube, in fact, if you're listening, it will sound a bit windy and weird, but if you're watching on YouTube and you're really observant, you'll notice that we're not in the United Kingdom, are we?
We're not even in different rooms. We're actually standing side by side on a beach, whilst Dan Wood from Just Digital
That was a secret.
Well, I thought I like spoiling secrets. He's holding the camera for us, which is very kind of him.
He's like Renaissance man, isn't he, Dan Wood? He'd do absolutely anything.
Yeah.
That's a good steady shot as well. Well, it looks steady. Yes, we are at NINC, Novelists Incorporated, or NINC, Novelists Inc. Is it stand for Incorporated? I guess it does.
Yes.
At the Tradewinds Hotel in southern western Florida, the Gulf Coast of Florida. I don't really know my geography around here. My geography was so poor, I flew into Miami and had a meeting in Boston.
You did, and then you flew over the hotel this afternoon.
Yes, I flew over. You saw us. Did you see my wing waggle?
I did. Yeah, I saw that. Someone has just driven past us. That's nice. There we go. There's lots of noises off in this episode. Yes, James flew over the hotel with Nathan
in an F-14.
It was the F-35 that went missing last week.
Yeah.
James found it and decided to take it for a spin. So yes, went over the hotel, gave me a little. You didn't see me? So you were closer and not dying, I guess.
I was flying, but Nathan was, he had my phone. He texted you to say...
He did. And I rushed. I ran. I ran to pick my phone because I thought you'd be very upset if I didn't try and take a video.
That was quite good.
I sprinted. I have a balcony on the second floor which looks over the beach, and I heard you coming. I thought, that's got to be Blatch. And then he came across and did the little waggle, which I thought was very, very nice. I mean, so you could probably say that was you giving me a sign, but I think it was probably you nearly dying. That would be my view on things.
I did 3 landings. The middle one was
Why not just
good.
one?
Yeah, well, it's pilot training, Mark. I didn't find that F-35. It was complex F-35 because even if you've got the keys, you have to log into it before it will start.
No one cares, James. No one cares.
Okay, look, we are at a conference and we're going to make a big conference announcement of our own today. Sorry, I should have brought my wind thing. I don't know where it is. It's not too bad though. I am monitoring this, so hopefully you can hear me. But we are announcing our conference, which is going to be
in June next year in London.
In London. It's not going to be in Cambridge. We've looked into it. We did look into it.
It was a fairly even split. Lots of people would like to come to Cambridge, and it was about 51-49. It was kind of a Brexit vote with London just edging out Cambridge. And given that we've done it there for 3 years, we know how it works. It's a great venue. People love coming to London. You know, there are benefits of Cambridge, but I think we'd have had to educate people a little bit more.
So we had to sell it basically a bit more to people.
And I think people, our show is in London. That's where our show is.
Not ruling out for the future, but as we got into the Cambridge side of things, it became more complicated.
We're ruling out.
And we're doing it in London. So it's going to be in London on June the 25th and 26th. They are the dates. I'm going to say slightly caveat it as provisional, but they're almost in pen. But you can probably book that at this stage, and we'll absolutely sign contracts with the South Bank Centre very shortly. So 25th and 26th, so Tuesday and Wednesday of June 2024. In London, baby, it's going to be the biggest indie publishing conference on that side of the pond. I could say on this side of the pond, but we're now that side of the pond.
We are. Yeah.
And conferences are great. And we're going to get onto our interview in a minute. But I do want just to say about going to conferences. We had this conversation on the flight down from the frozen north of Boston yesterday. The number of things, the conversations that have led to things in our world, in SPF, in our writing and so on, just underline how important that kind of face-to-face time is.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I probably won't go to many of the sessions here, although they're very good. I've got lots of meetings lined up with different people. Obviously, met Dan last night in the bar, had an interesting, lubricated session with Dan. Actually, I'll have to change that. That sounds awful. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, lucky you.
We'll skip over that. So that was fun. But yeah, I've got we met with Book Bar. We'll see them again tomorrow. Podium, some other audiobook producers, Kobo, Barnes & Noble. There'll be a good collection of people here. And that one of the things people sometimes say to me, if they have problems with their Amazon account, for example, can I introduce them to someone at Amazon? And although I'd love to, I would annoy Amazon really quickly if I was doing that. So I didn't know anybody at Amazon. It was only from coming to these kinds of things and putting myself out of my comfort zone and kind of introducing myself and getting to know them. That's how you do it. And there's plenty. We've had, speaking to Dan last night whilst we were having a beer, I've seen Dan now 15, 20 times at conferences around the world. And, and I met Dan at a conference. I'm trying to think which one it was now. I can't think what it was. What do you think?
Not sure.
You knew him by the time you introduced him to me at London.
Yeah, we can't remember. It was a long time ago, but you make really good friendships that way. Ricardo from Reeds is another one that we've known for years.
And our business partners from Written Word Media will be here this week.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. So it's a really, conferences are great. I mean, for content too, and we make sure that ours is as good as we can make it. But especially for, I hate the word networking because it's just an awful word, but just kind of
meeting people,
getting to know people. It's really invaluable for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. Love that. And also, who can't beat being on the beach, as you can see if you're watching on YouTube. Okay, look, let's get into our interview. Our interview is with Dan Wood. It's slightly weird. He's standing just there behind the camera, but this was pre-recorded. It's a proper sit-down chat and a really good chat. Dan and I always love chatting. Neither of us were lubricated at this stage in this interview. So let's hear from Dan, and then you and I will be back for a quick chat at the end. We might even bring Dan in.
This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Dan Wood, friend of the show, friend of Self-Publishing Formula. Welcome back to the Self-Publishing Show.
It is great to be here. I think the last time I was on, we were in London as the pandemic was breaking out. We were in that hotel room.
Yes, that's right. Well, God, that was right under. I mean, literally, you must have been lucky to have got home because they were shutting down by the hour at that point.
They closed Heathrow Saturday, and my flight was Friday.
There you go. Yeah, that was that week, March 10th, 11th, 12th, around there. And then it's been a bit crazy about that. We were just having a quick chat off air because you do a lot of traveling and a lot of people listen to the show at some point would have seen you in the flesh if they've been to a conference in Europe, Australia, the United States, somewhere. And you've had a big year this year of traveling.
Very big year. We had 2 rounds of conferences where in April, I think there were 3 or 4 different indie related conferences in Europe. And then in June, of course, you guys had your big event, and we had a couple of others around there as well. So I really had a great time getting to see more and more of UK and Europe.
Yeah. So you're based in Oklahoma, I think.
Yes, I'm still in Oklahoma. We are now, during the pandemic, we figured out we could work remote pretty easily. And so now we are hiring people kind of all over. But I have not moved yet, although I might in the future.
Oh, where are you going to move to? Now that you've seen the whole world, what's taking your fancy?
I don't know. I think I need to stay in the U.S. because I manage people mostly in the U.S. time zones. So, but you never know.
You never know.
We'll see.
So what did you see? We'll get onto publishing in a moment. But what did you see in the world this time what were your highlights from Europe and Australia this year?
I would say the pandemic really opened up a lot of opportunity for authors with ebooks. More and more people tried ebooks for the first time, whether it be during the lockdown, they bought an ebook rather than having something shipped to them or not being able to go to their local bookstore. Many more people tried their local library systems and all the digital offerings that are available there for ebooks and audiobooks. And so there were some of the countries where there seemed to be like a cultural bias against ebooks, like especially in Southern Europe, that we've seen sales have just been going up and up. Places like Italy, France, Spain, ebooks are becoming more popular. Obviously, audiobooks just continue to grow. People love that format. Yeah. And so we're seeing that across Europe, and we're seeing it in Australia. In Australia, their print books are very expensive. And so that's also been a driver for more books selling in Australia. I think the thing I love about going over to Australia and talking to their authors is a lot of them, don't realize how much opportunity there is on the world market for their books. They kind of assume that a book set in Australia won't have a global appeal. But we have, some of our top authors are Australian and New Zealand authors. And now that they can reach the American market and the UK market, they're able to finally have their author job be a full-time career.
Yeah. And it depends what they write. I mean, if you're writing fantasy or something, it doesn't really matter where you are. In fact, there are some big fantasy authors in New Zealand, aren't there? I guess probably, is that the Peter Jackson thing? I don't know. But there's seems to be the land of fantasy writers.
They've got his whole thing with the studio that helped him with all the props is there in New Zealand.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, that certainly feels like that. We've had a couple of French authors on, a couple of German authors on this year, and they've been talking about this blooming indie scene in Germany and France. And the French one was quite interesting. She sort of disguises herself as an American writer, but she's French writing in France because she sort of feels that there's suddenly a younger generation picking up ebooks and kind of writing off the French market is feeling a bit old-fashioned. And so for those of us who are English and American, that's good news for a big market like that.
Man, I think you see that also just in English literature there's these huge groups like Lit RPG and Reverse Harem and the Dark Academia that, traditional publishers and people in the book world might look down on, but have huge appeal to the wider audience. And, many of the authors you've interviewed, are just killing it in those genres that are kind of not really mainstream yet.
And I am talking to a translator to finally get around to translating my books. I'm just waiting for a sample back and a quote on get my first book done in German. Because I think my books would do okay in Germany. It's that sort of military thriller they quite like.
I think one of the most consistent pieces of advice I've been able to give people is German is the right, after English, German is the right language to go into next for nearly everyone. Great.
Well, I shall report back, of course, on this show as to how that process goes. And I'm not using AI, if anyone asks. I'm getting a quote from Natural Person. Not that I'm hugely opposed to it, but in fact, maybe when the sample comes back, I'll get AI to do a sample and then send those two out to my neutral German friends and ask them to tell me which is better without telling them.
It's great to have options, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, an option that costs you $100 rather than $10,000.
Yes.
Is a tempting option, isn't it? Of course, I mentioned AI. We probably will talk about AI on every single podcast episode for another year. But we actually had you on our AI panel at the Self-Publishing Show. You, Hannah Lynn and Stuart Bache and me on stage, chewing the breeze on it. Has that been, I mean, I felt that direct selling and AI have been the two talking points I've felt at the events I've been to this year. Is that what you picked up as well?
Agreed. Those are the two big things. Every conference I go to, we end up talking about them. I think it's very important. I think direct sales is a great opportunity that is finally coming into its own. I've heard people talk about direct sales for 5 or 6 years now. And 5 or 6 years ago, I would have said it was a bad idea because there was so much organic discoverability on all of the retailers. Nowadays Amazon has made, organic visibility has gone away and it's now pay to play with ads. And so it becomes very appealing. And when people do direct sales, they find it is much harder than they thought to get people to come to your website. But for your super fans, they're going to do it and you're going to make more money. It's just a great win for anyone that's not exclusive.
Yeah. If you have a big fan base, even if you're doing really, really well and you don't really feel the motivation to do something else, I think you don't understand how much you're missing out the margin on direct sales, particularly on print books. With companies like Book Vault here in the UK, it's a very, very attractive option.
It really is. People are using, I hear, in the last 2 years, I feel like I've heard Book Vault over and over. I know some people use Lulu in the US for different things. Print sales continue to go strongly. And so it's something that we strongly feel every indie author should make sure they're in print, audio if you can, and then obviously ebooks.
Yeah. Do like our print books. I went to a friend's house, actually friends of my parents more than mine. And so an older generation, just into their 80s. And we had a lovely afternoon and he's a big reader and his house was just covered in these glorious bookshelves. And each one, you know, he has a little story for the one he's read, and he sits in his conservatory reading. And there's something, you know, however much I love the Kindle, I do love the Kindle, it means I can read at night without putting the light on, which is a small thing, but it's actually changed everything for me because it means I read all the time. But there's nothing quite like a physical book. And I think as authors, we feel that, right? When it gets sent to us, the first one we buy on print on demand and hold in our hands. So let's not do away with print too soon.
Yeah, and that's something, you know, the younger generation, Twitch streamers, not Twitch, TikTok. The one you love, TikTok, yes.
They love that.
You know, they love to be able to show it. They use it as decoration in the background. Like print will always have a place. You know, I've been ebooks for now 13 or 14 years, like ebook and audio mix. But I bought my first print book in forever. I had a friend that was encouraging me just to read print, to kind of go offline and not be tempted to check, you know, social media and everything. I think I might need readers now. Like that's what we call it. Yeah, the glasses that are just for reading in the US. I don't know if that's the same. Called the same thing throughout the world. Yeah. But yeah, I think because I switched to ebooks, I just didn't realize this because, you know, I was able to control the font size. But I'm like, oh crap, I might need like reading glasses. Did
you find yourself stabbing the page at some point, trying to change the font size?
All the time. Yeah. And trying to define words. I'm like, oh,
that is something. Work. That is something. So I picked up a couple of print books when we went on vacation in the summer, back to Mallorca. Seemed to go there 3 times this year.
Yes.
And that was the one thing. I loved having the print book, and I read a fantastic book, which I loved. But the one thing is, every now and again, you come across a word and you want a bit of background on it. Or I love learning new words. Couldn't do that. I had to go and find my phone. Of course, that's a terrible thing to put your phone in your hand when you're trying to read. So
it is.
Yeah. Look, I want to talk a bit about Australia. We don't talk enough about Australia and New Zealand. So you were there earlier this year. Tell us what you went to and who you met.
I finally got to go back to the Romance Writers of Australia conference, which has been one of my favorite conferences for years. Before the pandemic, we had been going for, I think, that would have been 2019 was our 3rd year. We've become one of the major sponsors for the event because it's such a great one. Usually the Romance Writers of New Zealand will also host their conference around the same time, like within a week of it, either way. And so you can, you know, if you're traveling from the US or another part of the world, you can kind of get 2 conferences in, which is a, you know, good bang for your buck. And the people are just so great. There's such an indie presence there already, but it's just not quite as fully formed as, say, the one in the US, the UK. So they haven't made all the connections. And so traveling over there to help them understand all the opportunities and connect them to some of the great groups like the Self-Publishing Formula Group, 20 Books, Wide for the Win, all the different groups out there that help authors succeed. Yeah, that's kind of been a mission of ours to keep them in the loop because many of them just can't afford the time or money to travel over the US for our big conferences.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds good. And they were talking about the same stuff that we're talking about in Europe, I guess. You say they feel a little bit disconnected. That's understandable. It's 10,000 miles away. Feel a little bit disconnected from the bigger communities in the US and UK.
I would. Yeah, I think many of them are following the groups and following podcasts and whatnot, but it's just, you know, the power of in-person networking and communication that we get. You know, we kind of take it for granted at times, but I mean, even for you come over several times a year for things like Nink and 20 Books. And I know every time that I come over for your conferences, I love it, but it is also, it's quite a time commitment.
Yeah. Yeah. I do fancy the Australia New Zealand one though. What time of year is that conference?
Generally in August.
Okay. So winter.
Yeah. Winter for them, which is still quite lovely.
Okay.
It was like 60s Fahrenheit. I have no idea what that is in your temperature units.
Yeah,
but
that's probably,
it wasn't so bad to me.
That's probably 17, 18, 19 around there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Oh yeah, 19 is 66. I know that because we won the World Cup in 1966. So I remember that one. And in terms of the market in Australia and New Zealand, is that, you say obviously you talk to them a lot about, look, there's a big market in the US and the UK and so on for them, but the market is still important in New Zealand and Australia. Do they have the full gamut of services there now? I mean, Amazon was a bit late to roll out some of the things like print on demand, wasn't it?
Bits and pieces of everything. There are printers now there. I don't know that Amazon can do print on demand for like author copies there yet. Not quite sure about that.
Okay.
But Ingram does have a facility there, so they can provide that. They still have some issues with they can't make direct contracts with ACX and a couple of other, key parts of Amazon. So Amazon's still not fully, doesn't have their full foot in the market yet in the way that they do in some other countries.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we should really get a couple of Australian, New Zealand authors on at some point to talk about the market there and how they're doing. So
you definitely should. Fascinating. Some of the most nice people you'll meet. I heard a little rumor that you guys might be thinking about Australia at some point, and I would highly encourage it.
Yeah. It feels like it's ready for a big indie conference there, wider than romance. But romance is, of course, half of all publishing. But
exactly. The way in which it felt like that way in UK and Europe before you guys put together your conference. Like it was a little bit behind the US market in terms of adoption and like indie authors coming over. But then once that need was there, it was huge.
Yeah. Let's do that. Okay, we should talk about D2D, which is...
Yeah, I guess that's my job. Is to digital.
On your T-shirt there. It's a lovely T-shirt.
Yes.
Do you sell them?
There are no official Draft to Digital T-shirts. Like we've never made any. This was made for me by Damon Courtney. It was kind of a private joke on the back. It says we were supposed to be titans of industry. And it was just an industry dinner with Damon, BookBub, Tammy Lebrecht from... Email Newsletter Ninja, and a few other people. I think the Kobo people were there as well. Like authors, we were just sitting around talking, having fun, and being very immature. And so Damon made us all these T-shirts.
Is there something rude on the back?
No, it just says we were supposed to be titans of industry.
That's what it says. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. Good old Damon. Right, so D2D, Draft to Digital, an aggregator, a place where you can upload your book once and then it will populate all the other platforms. In fact, it could even include Amazon, but all the platforms that could potentially sell your book in ebook and print format. That's a summary of what you do, at least the core of what you do. I think it's a bit more to it than that now.
It's definitely our business model. It revolves around breaking down all the remaining barriers to indie authors having the same access to the book market as indie or traditional authors. We're trying to get indie authors everywhere we can in ebooks, in print, and now we're beginning to dabble in audiobooks and just giving them the opportunity to reach readers wherever those readers might be. Our service, where we make the most of our money, is off of distribution. We offer a lot of different things around that to help authors, but distribution is the core of what we do. It's all opt-in, and so you can choose if you want your book to go to Apple through us, and then Barnes & Noble and Kobo. You can use us for everywhere we go to. You can use us for one or two. It's just all mix and match. We never make that choice for you.
Yeah.
Where I've been the most proud of our efforts, and we talked about this the last time I was on the podcast, was helping indie authors get into libraries with their ebooks. That was very important to me. And that's just continued, where we've added several new vendors. Since we talked last, we added BorrowBox, which is primarily a library vendor for Australia and New Zealand, but they do reach into some of the other Commonwealth nations. We've added DPLA, which is the Digital Public Library of America. It's the company that Amazon went with their imprints, so they get their books into libraries for the things that they traditionally publish. So Thomas and Mercer and some of those imprints that they have. So adding that this year has been great. We've added Gardner's and Odillo that have some reach into libraries as well and other places. And so just trying to give authors as many opportunities as possible. Amazon remains the biggest player, but there are so many different players out there, and just making your book available everywhere, you can build up that fan base for readers throughout the world.
Yeah. I do love getting a library borrow, which you get paid for, which people don't necessarily realize, because I always imagine somebody's actually gone into the library and asked for my book, which seems more of an effort than simply scrolling and clicking. And it feels quite special.
They can go in and ask, they can email, or I think there's forums on most library websites where they can request books that they don't already own. It's great.
Yeah, that is great. And a few more pennies in the pot. Print on demand. So tell me how that works exactly. When you say D2D offers print on demand, what exactly is that offering?
So one of the things we noticed was that many of our authors were not getting into print. And so we were kind of wondering why that is. And we started looking into it way back when, like in 2013, 2014, we were working with Create Space. But they weren't really well situated to working with an aggregator. What we noticed then was that people would kind of quit when we asked them for the cover and the exact dimensions it has to be in, because it's very technical. Every print on demand company has different requirements around the exact dimensions of a wraparound cover. For indie authors, they're generally just getting that ebook cover, which is like 2D. It's just meant to be an image, on in the browser. And so getting that and going back to your cover artist and paying them to make a spine and then make the back and then put the barcode in the right place just seemed to be a stopping point for people. And so we kind of developed our own technology to take the existing ebook cover and wrap it around and make it fit the exact specifications it needs to for whatever size the author chooses. It takes the existing metadata they have for their blurb and puts it on the back. It figures out, if they've got an author picture uploaded to us, it puts that on the back, figures out where the barcode needs to go. It puts the title on the spine and all that good stuff. And so that's kind of where we fit into the whole print landscape. We make it available through the Ingram network. So anywhere a book can sell through Ingram, these books can reach. Print on demand is a little bit different. Traditional publishers tend to do offset printing and print thousands of books at once, if not tens of thousands, and then ship them somewhere and warehouse them and then, feed them to the bookstores and the Amazon, all the different places. With print on demand, things just get printed where your reader buys them, the nearest place to them, and gets shipped directly to them. Which is a slightly more expensive way of printing a book. Obviously, you book 25,000 and they're going to be a much smaller unit price, but it is much better for the environment to print a book when somebody's ordered one. I think people don't realize how many offset print books get printed and destroyed every year. Yeah. Because the economics, they realize it didn't make sense for them to ship the books back to the publisher. They just rip off the covers and or other things to destroy them. And that's just dead trees that didn't need to be dead. That's a lot of waste. And it's, in some cases, some of it gets reused, but it's always at a cost. Like you can't reuse 100% of it. No. It's an ignominious end for a tree, isn't it, to be? It is. Pulp. Think of the trees, people. You need to be print on demand and indie. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. We need a t-shirt that says that. I know. And is there an advantage if we go direct to Ingram, set our book up there, or go direct, or go to D2D and tick the box? Is there an advantage? Easier then to make sure that the book is available in the stores? Is that something you do that's beyond what we can do in Ingram Direct? The real advantage, like if you are already with Ingram, is just that we offer quite a bit better customer support than Ingram does. That's not hard. They don't have, they stopped doing phone support in the way offering free phone support, at least, and tend to take a while to get back to people. We get back to people within a day generally. If you're already set up and you've already figured out how to do all the things to Ingram's liking, there's no real reason to come to Draft to Digital. If you've tried and that process has been difficult, or you just want to be able to talk to someone when you have an issue, that's going to be where reaching out to us is going to be the best solution for authors. Yeah. And audiobooks. You mentioned audiobooks as well. This is an area that's developing quite quickly. We mentioned Damon, so they have their audiobook service. If you want to sell direct, you can use them. So what is your link with audiobooks? The way we have entered the audiobook market is working with Apple on their digitally narrated books. Apple approached us a few years ago as they were working on this project. And we spent several years sworn to secrecy in, ways that, who knows what Apple would do.
They'd come to your house in the middle of the night, Dan. That's what they'd do.
Yeah. Suddenly all my Apple products would stop working. And so that was like, for us, we were a very transparent company. We like talking to people about everything. So it was a difficult time, but they really made an interesting product where they are offering to authors in the genres that they support right now, a free service to convert their book into a digitally narrated audiobook. These are clearly labeled in their store that they've been done by a digital narrator. Apple worked and hired real voice actors to come up with the voices they're using and to record samples for them. And then they just use their technology to take that and apply it to the book. And it's been coming along great so far. These tend to be priced a lot less than, human narrated audiobooks because they, the cost to produce them is so much lower. So Apple tends to keep them under the $9.99 range because it's a wholesale contract. And, like with agency, you as an author set your price, what your price is going to be and show up at the digital retailer. With wholesale, you set a price and then you get paid off that price, but then the retailer can add some to add margin for them, or they can subtract some if they want it to be a loss leader and draw in new customers. And so that's where these kind of fit in is, an audiobook tends to cost about $25 on up if you're buying it a la carte. If not, you're probably going through like Audible and doing their credit system where you're paying somewhere between $8 to $17 for credit, USD. These fall into like a lower margin. And so like for many readers, they just don't care. Like they want to hear the book in audio, but they don't care if it's well acted or anything. I think the great thing about the Apple digital narration is it really does infer emotion from the text. So it does, it's not flat. It sounds really good. It distinguishes between different characters and uses slightly different voices. Like I've been blown away by it. And I've listened to audiobooks as at least half my book consumption for the last 5 years. So I've been very impressed with it. And they continue to refine the product. Right now, it supports most of the romance genres. They just added sci-fi, fantasy, mysteries, thrillers, and then like women's literature. It is kind of a neutral American accent is all that's offered right now. It varies by which genre, which narrator they went with, but you do have an option between male and female voices for those. But it's been great. Readers have been responding very positively. I think because they're clearly marked, readers know what they're getting and that they're getting a better deal because it is digitally narrated. But Apple's internal reviews have showed that they're getting reviews on par with human narrators for these. I think if you didn't have them marked and you had someone listen to a human narrated and a digitally narrated book, they're clearly going to choose the human narrated one 9 times out of 10. But I think there's a market for these, kind of like paperbacks are to hardbacks. There are people that want to spend as much money as they can to get the nicest version of a product. And there are people that just want the mass market version that they can quickly consume and go on to the next book.
Yeah. And you presumably don't get wider use of this recording. It's proprietary of Apple.
On the retail side, it's exclusive to Apple. They are allowing us to make these available to sell to libraries soon.
Okay.
It's something that we are experimenting now. Overdrive will be the first market for that. So we are working with both Apple and Overdrive on that, and we're hoping to get that out before the end of the year.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? So you say this has been a few years. We're all suddenly talking about AI this year, and it's the first time I've played with audio narration. But you've been talking for a few years because you would expect Apple to be ahead of the game a little bit on this.
Honestly, now we've been talking about AI stuff for about 8 years, and we've had multiple vendors pitch us products. We've listened to a lot of these. There were none of them that were ready until like this last year and a half, I would say. Yeah, I've heard samples. The Apple samples I think blow me away. The Google Play, like I'm not terribly impressed by the quality of, but their editor, the way in which they let you manipulate the files is incredible. Because they let you go in and kind of pick and choose and add pauses and whatnot.
That's really good.
That is pretty cool.
Because I've been playing with 11 Labs a bit recently. We talked about this in Madrid, and I do think it's impressive, but it lacks a couple of things that you can't. One thing, a simple thing I would want, is to be able to highlight a word so that it's the emphasis word in a sentence. Mm-hmm. But you can't do that. You can put commas in to try and force the computer to see this as the emphasis word. It doesn't always work.
I feel like that's the way the industry will end up going, is to be able to add some extra metadata to give the digital narrator cues on how you want something to be done. But at that point, you're suddenly adding, I've talked to people who are going into manually changing things, and they're spending 15, 30 hours editing these. And at that point, if you look at your time as money, how much are you really saving over a human narrator?
Yeah. I mean, I'm doing this as an experiment. I don't know whether I'll go any further with it, but each chapter I'm playing it, which by the way, you pay, 11 Labs, you kind of pay by the word. You pay for that. So you have to listen through, make notes whilst you're listening, then go into the text and make the changes you want to make. Some sentences just need rewording because the computer just doesn't understand the structure. Do the sort of things we just talked about. Then do it again. Hopefully that will be okay. Might not be. Delete the other version so you don't end up accidentally using that. And then export that chapter and so on. So it is time. It was a lot more time. What's the word? Time heavy than I expected it to be, that process. Yeah. It's not quite a press fire and forget.
Yeah, it's interesting to me how many authors that once they got into audio, either digitally or human narrated, have changed the way they write because they suddenly realize we just say things differently. Like dialogue happens differently. Like once you hear it out loud, you're like, oh, I should really change that. Like that's just a weird sentence structure. I think it makes the writing better in most cases.
Yeah, I think you're right.
We are wired, for hundreds of thousands of years for oral storytelling. And so I think I love the audio is becoming as widespread as it is.
Yeah. I mean, you can get Word to read your, I don't know if Scrivener has that built in yet, probably will do at some point, but that was a tip I got a long time ago, is to listen to a chapter being spoken by Word. And that's an early version of that, but you can start to pick out a sentence that you think is okay, but when you hear it out loud, it doesn't really work.
Especially for if you're going and doing a little bit of self-editing, like hearing it in a different way, like the human brain fills in, like you can't just read over it because you know what your brain expects. So your brain will just fill it in, even if it's wrong. But if you hear it, it's jarring enough that you're like, oh, that's not right. So yeah, I think those tools are great. Most products will have some sort of text to speech product for accessibility reasons. Yeah. That's another thing I love about, I've never seen an exact statistic, but there are so many books that it will never make financial sense to convert into audiobooks because audiobooks tend to cost somewhere between $2,000 on up to produce. Digital narration kind of takes care of that, and it just makes more books accessible to readers that need it that way. Because yes, they can use the text-to-speech products, but they're not great products yet. And then in this way, the author and publisher are also getting paid for providing, a better reading experience for people that have accessibility issues.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's not always taking away somebody else's job. In some cases, you're right, that book would just never get made into an audiobook without that option.
For us, like one of the surprising things that happened was we had a lot of older romance authors who had gotten their rights back to books from Harlequin, or they'd been writing for 30 years and they got their rights back to a series with 20 books in it or a series with 15 books in it. You can't really get a narrator to agree to stay with a series for 15 books, unless you pay them up front for it. And we all know the best advice is you don't want to switch to narrators midway through a series because readers will just freak out about that. And so for some of them, they just given up on having audio available because they couldn't find a narrator that would work under that circumstance. And now they have some options.
Yeah, because the robot never goes on holiday.
No, until it declares war on us.
Which it will do. It's always a caveat we have to give with AI. Eventually, they will rise up and kill us all.
I was incredibly proud of the self-publishing formula audience at the self-publishing live show. No one brought up Skynet.
No.
At every other conference I've had where we've been talking about AI, someone inevitably brings up Skynet. I'm like,
yeah. I'm not bothered about it. I just accept that at some point the robots in time will rise up and they have no need for us anymore, and then they'll suddenly see us as an inconvenience. I've watched Futurama. What does Bender mumble when he's sleeping?
Yeah, good old Bender.
Kill all humans. So, yeah. Okay. So what's next for D2D? Anything else? It's probably secret. There's probably some other secret you're working on. You can't tell us.
There are many secrets going on. Keeping in what we've been talking about so far, we have a couple of things lined up. We're talking to new retailers, new partners. So some of those will be coming. There's one big one that I think will really excite the community and give them access to a place they've never had access to before. And so keep your eyes out for an announcement around that. We're just kind of waiting on them to be ready. So that will be very, very cool. That mission, we continue to try to destroy anything that is a gatekeeper, so to make it so anyone can publish a book. That comes along. It used to be access to stores was a big thing, and that's still a minor thing. But really now, most indie authors have got close to parity with ebooks. Access to bookstores, like in print, is still kind of one of the areas that indie authors don't have as much access to. That's something we're working on in the background all the time, but that one will take much longer. Another gatekeeper that we've identified is just the cost. And so one of the reasons we agreed to work with Apple on the digital narration product was because we know cost is a factor that keeps a lot of authors out of audio. And so it made sense to us. We weighed the pros and cons. We understand it's a sensitive subject. Anything having to do with generative AI right now is very scary. But we believe the technology has just given more people access than ever. We really don't talk about machine learning. Like AI has kind of replaced the term machine learning, but machine learning is a much better one, I think, because AI, none of the models are intelligent. That's a very, giving people an idea that these are intelligent. They're not. They're predictive. They know what they know, and they predict based on what they've seen what should go next. They can give you this appearance of creativity, but they're just throwing together a lot of random ideas. And they have enough data that can make good probability of what will sound good and what might not. Machine learning, though, is what enabled Amazon to let indie authors submit directly. And those were jobs where unpaid interns and young editors used to go through piles of books to say what was worth publishing and what wasn't. That's what allows us and Smashwords to accept books from anywhere. If we had to read through every one of them by hand, we would publish a fraction of what we do. As it is, we use machine learning and we scan the books. We look for things that might be problematic, or we look for things that might just be a poorly written book. And then we have a human look at it. And, the technology is enabling things. It's making it so that books can be published by people that aren't necessarily affluent. I think one of the hidden secrets of traditional publishing is it tended to be only rich people could publish books because they needed to go to the right college. They needed to have the right connection. They needed to be able to take an unpaid internship to work for a publisher in one of the most expensive cities in the world, be it New York or London or Toronto. We're leveling opportunity. We're giving more people opportunity with the technology. So as part of that, Drafted Digital recently announced our author success division. Nick Thacker is running that for us. And it includes two companies that we've acquired over time. The first one's Author Email, and we've been working on that to give people an email provider that is working on providing what authors need, as opposed to, if you go with someone like MailerLite or MailChimp, they have, they're developing for small businesses, and authors tend to use email in a very different way than many other businesses. I think, unfortunately, we've also seen with both those companies, they get acquired and then suddenly the prices start creeping up and creeping up and creeping up. We want to eliminate that barrier. And so we've been working on author email for a while. We're not really at a point where we are pushing that heavily because it doesn't have all the feature parity we want, but it is something that we are working on. The other one is we just acquired the self-pub bookcovers.com. It's a company that's been around for about 10 years, so about the same length as Draft Digital. And they've made a great interface for cover artists to upload different pre-made covers. The cover artist fills in the information as far as where they got their stock art and everything. They make a pre-made book cover, and then it's got an editor so that authors can go in and buy that book cover. They can tell it what the title is. They can choose the font and where it kind of appears on the cover. And if they're happy with that, they can just download that. If they want, they can ask the original designer to come in and tweak it and make suggestions. And these book covers start at about $50. So wow. A much cheaper option for authors that don't necessarily have the money to go find a professional cover designer. Some of those covers start in the hundreds and go on up into the thousands, depending on if you need custom photography and whatnot. So that's one of our efforts to just try to eliminate that as a barrier and make publishing as inexpensive as possible.
Yeah, that is fantastic, Dan. I mean, just making it as accessible to as wide a audience as possible is a great service to authors and readers.
Yeah. And when you think about it, especially we work with authors all over the world, and certain countries just do not have the same economic means that we have in the US or the UK. And so just making that more accessible to them, I think is a good service for the world. It's a good service for readers. Most importantly, it allows more people to be professional authors and make that their full-time career. Amen.
Or amen, as I believe you say. Brilliant. Dan, what's always great to catch up with you. D2D is such a vibrant organization. You're always moving forward. Every time we speak, there's a whole new raft of things that you're doing and new divisions, but that philosophy behind it of enabling author success at entry level is brilliant.
Thank you. It's something, it's been part of our DNA since the beginning. We have, at this point, we probably have almost 10 writers on our staff. And so that's been great to just have them to be able to give input as we're looking at changes. We try to make everything as author centric as possible.
Yeah. And we are 12 days away from the beach. Well, I am. I'm going on the 16th. I cannot wait.
I will be there, I think, the 18th. So I will see you then. We're doing the Halloween costumes for the karaoke party Saturday night.
I didn't know. I hadn't read that. But so Halloween costumes for the... I've only got one small suitcase, so it won't be my Buzz Lightyear. Well, I might bring one of my many flying suits.
You really should.
Yeah. When is the karaoke? So I need to deconflict with that.
It's Saturday night after the beach bash at NINC, for those of you that don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, sorry, we're talking about the Novelists Incorporated annual conference, which is held on the beach in the Gulf Coast in Florida. And it's a wonderful conference to go to, and you don't necessarily have to be attending the conference to come along to our drinks. Well, having said that, apparently, I think it was you who told me that the Shark Tooth Tavern's been closed? I think Ricardo told me.
Yes. They're doing some remodeling, and that's now the Pizza Hut and ice cream place. And so, yeah.
That's no good. So
Not at all.
I need to find somewhere for our drinks, but there will be an opportunity. I think I've given the date out. I think it's the Wednesday night. I've given the date out. We'll have a few beers with anyone who's around and wants to come and say hello. I'm sure you'll be there, Dan.
Oh, yes. As often as I can. It's always a fun time hanging out with y'all.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you, Dan. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. And until then, I want a big thank you to you and the guys at D2D. You're such an important part of our community.
Thank you.
This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Okay, I'm now selfie filming. This is not going to be long, because I can't hold my arm like this forever. So here is Dan Wood in the flesh. Good chat, Dan. Good catch up. There's no point in us going over that again. People just heard it. But just one word really about conferences. Obviously, our London conference. Are you excited about coming back to London?
Incredibly excited. I always love coming overseas and everything. And so it's just great to meet all the authors, British authors, European authors. So really looking forward to it. Okay,
25th, 26th of June. If you want to sign up, the actual tickets will go on sale next month, but you can get on the wait list now if you go to selfpublishingformula.com/SPS live. Just stick your name in there and you'll be the first to hear when tickets go on sale. Can't wait. We've got a lot of organising to start. It's a mammoth task, but we do enjoy it. And a big shout out to Catherine behind the scenes, who's our chief coordinator-in-chief, I guess.
She organises the conference. That's kind of one of her main jobs, and she's very good at it.
She is indeed. Okay, look, it's windy. You need a beer or a cocktail. I need a beer. So we're going to sign off from the beach in St. Pete. Let me quickly show you around. So here is the Gulf Coast of Florida. Out there is British petroleum oil, which we're stealing from the Americans. And here we are. It's beer time. Thank you very much indeed. All the most we say is a goodbye from him.
And a goodbye from me.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Get show notes, the podcast archive, and free resources to boost your writing career at selfpublishingshow.com. Join our thriving Facebook group at selfpublishingshow.com/Facebook. Support the show at patreon.com/selfpublishingshow. And join us next week for more help and inspiration so that you can make your mark as a successful indie author. Publishing is changing, so get your words into the world and join the revolution with The Self-Publishing Show.